What's good, folks? We back. Today, we taking a hard look at something that doesn't quite add up in The Walking Dead, the final season. Listen, at the apocalypse started 9 years ago, some of these kids like Willy and Tenn at the boarding school, it raises a lot of questions. Listen, they age don't add up with the timeline. So, I'm gonna break it down, look at the math, and figure out if it's a retcon or I'm just tripping. So stay tuned, cause I'm gonna show a good way to fix it that'll make the story even better than it already is. So let me tell you, let's start off with the fact that the kids were already enrolled in Ericson boarding school. And that's before the apocalypse even began. Here's the setup. The apocalypse is supposedly started 9 years ago. That's when season 1 started in Clementine and Lee. But when you look at the kids in the final season, things get a little murky. Here's the thing. Boarding schools, they typically only take kids if they 7 years or older. Take Willy for example. He was supposed to be about 12 in the final season. He looked a little younger, I'm not gonna lie. And this means when the apocalypse started, he would have been the minimum age to enroll in the boarding school. If he was already enrolled in Ericson boarding school when the world fell apart, that would mean that the apocalypse only started 5 years ago and not 9. The math ain't adding up there. The math ain't adding up. But let me tell you, he's not the only one I'm talking about. We talking about Tenn. Tenn supposed to be younger than Willy. Probably around 11 years old or so. And in the final season, for him to also have been enrolled in Ericson boarding school, he had to have a late birthday, and he had to have barely been turned 7 when he was entered. Matter of fact, how did Tenn even get there? Ain't it for the troubled youth? How much damage is that 7-year-old causing, bruh? Again, it doesn't make sense unless the apocalypse started more recently than we've been told. And Tenn shouldn't even been able to enroll in the Ericson boarding school yet. But listen, this isn't just about Willy or Tenn. It's about the entire group of Ericson for any of them to be as young as they are in the final season. Listen, they had to still have been in school before the apocalypse started. And that means the timeline has to shrink significantly. We talking about 5 years instead of 9. Like, come on. Either that, or you could say that the apocalypse only started in Atlanta, Georgia, and it took about 3 years to get there. But that don't add up to me, because you already know, you played every other zombie game, they would have closed off Atlanta, Georgia, and it would have been right. Clementine would have never had to leave, and we could see that that's not the case. So something not adding up here. So what's going on here? Listen, there's a couple possibilities. One, I gotta say, from a writer's perspective, maybe the writers compressed the timeline down to make the kids feel younger and more vulnerable, because a 5-year apocalypse would have still left the kids with some connection to the pre-apocalyptic world. And you might be asking, why would the writers want that? Well, there are certain reasons that they would, because AJ himself, he don't know nothing but the apocalyptic world, and he never had any connection to it. And if the timeline would have never shifted, that would have mean Tenn and Willy would have never had a connection also, so they could relate to AJ. That kind of diminishes AJ's uniqueness in a way, because he wouldn't be the only one who never knew what a normal life was. Or it could have just been a mistake. Maybe they didn't realize how much the age of the characters would conflict with the timeline that they established back in season 1. If we told from season 1 is true, that would mean that Tenn and Willy, they would have been 3 years old when the world ended. Hey, maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they survived all that entire 9 years somehow. Somehow they put a 3-year-old in boarding school. And maybe that zombie teacher in the garden, she was just a demon, and she taught them kids how to survive at 9 and 3 years old. But here's how I would fix the situation. Listen, we not just rewriting the ages. We give them a little backstory and adding depth to the world to make the story even better than it is. Listen, we all know Marlon made a deal with the Raiders to trade away 2 kids to keep the rest safe. But what if he wasn't the first to do it? What if the adults in Ericson faced the same choice, but instead of the kids being the ones traded, it was themselves? Picture this, the world's still hanging on, not everybody died instantly, survivors coming together in different areas, and Ericson staff trying to keep the school running as a shelter. But food ran low, bandits start showing up, and the teachers knew they couldn't hold out forever. Then let's say a group of armed survivors arrive, not raiders, but a functioning community that's bigger, has a whole lot more assets than Ericson. And let's say they'll offer to protect the school and keep the kids safe, but in return, they're gonna need the adults for their own cause. At first, the staff thought they were being recruited. They'd just be moving into a bigger, safer place where they could help rebuild society. But it wasn't the case. The group needed workers, people to farm, repair, scavenge, maybe even fight for them like Delta. And the teachers will have to face a choice. Stay and risk everyone starving and being wiped out by the raiders, or leave the kids behind hoping that the group keeps their promise and protects them. And you might be saying this doesn't solve the problem, but I'm thinking if the group is big enough and powerful enough, the kids could really live a normal life for a good while, and Willy and Tenn, they could still have some type of experience with a normal life, even if the apocalypse started 9 years ago. I feel like this small change, it'll add a whole nother layer of mystery to that entire Ericson boarding school. But I know what you're thinking, maybe the apocalypse just didn't hit Ericson as fast as it hit Atlanta, Georgia. That still changes the story up quite a bit. Whatever the reason for this change, the way we look at the group is a little different, because if the apocalypse is only 5 years old for Ericson boarding school, that would mean that some parts of the world, it really lasted longer than we thought. And this is where it gets juicy at. Listen, that means the outbreak, it wasn't an instant global collapse, but instead, it was a slow burning fire. In certain countries and states, it might have been able to contain the infection for years. This gets me to believing that they probably had some type of military protection, and maybe the kids were being shielded by the adults. And before you say it, yes, I know the kids said the adults left them instantly, but hear me out. It's a boarding school. I feel like they very secluded, and the adults, they left when the military been overtaken by the zombies. Listen, that makes sense, because I don't think the adults would be that heartless. Like, there's some heartless folks out there, but you telling me all them teachers in the boarding school gonna lead like that? But I will say, if this apocalypse was a slow burning fire, it gives you hope that maybe there is a world out there where people just living normal lives, and who knows, maybe one day they could live a normal life themselves. So, you know, this is either this a retcon, or there's still a whole lot of life in The Walking Dead. But what do you think? Do you think it's a retcon? Do you think I looked too deep into it? Or did this got you thinking right now? Cause it really had me thinking about something. I was like, how is Willy this young? Didn't the apocalypse start 9 years ago? How this man 12? But let me know down in the comment what's your opinion on this, and how would you fix this retcon? Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you wanna, and if you into Walking Dead content, hey, I got some more videos. Look on the screen right now. But with that being said, we out. It's all still rains. Hit the subscribe and leave a like. Oh.